the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and the region. I now give the floor to Mr. Huang Xia.
Monsieur le Président, distingués membres du Conseil de
Mr. President, members of the Security Council, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to take this opportunity to thank you for granting me the opportunity to speak before the Security Council to take stock of the recent developments in the Great Lakes region. Since my last communication in April, significant developments have occurred at the diplomatic level. There has been a real hope was generated for a ceasefire that will help to pave the way for a lasting and definitive resolution in the east of the DRC. First and foremost, U.S. facilitation efforts in 27 June resulted in the signing in Washington of a peace agreement for the DRC and Rwanda. I thank the United States for their key contribution to this major step forward. A number of meetings were held since then, and they resulted in the establishment of a concept of operations for the implementation, beginning 1st of October, the implementation of the concept of operations for the FDLR, and the lifting of the measures. I also wish to applaud the tireless efforts of Qatar, which resulted in the signing of a declaration in principle and an agreement on a mechanism for September. I hope that the next negotiations session between the M23 and the DRC will resume soon and will result in the adoption of a peace agreement. With the impetus of the AU, African regional efforts were streamlined, resulting in greater coordination and progress being made. On the 13th of August, the Community of East African States and SADC adopted arrangements for the Nairobi and Rwanda process, which was launched by the African Union. And the president of Togo was engaged, and a panel of 5 facilitators, including former heads of state, delivered support. A secretariat has been placed under the aegis of the African Union Commission, based in Addis Ababa. All of these African-led and international-led peace efforts are commendable, and they are promising. Nevertheless, promises have not all been upheld. In order to achieve a genuine tranquility, the parties to the conflict have resumed coordination. The humanitarian situation remains catastrophic. Humanitarian access remains problematic, and there have been grave human rights violations which continue to be perpetrated, targeting civilians. As was recalled by the representative during the presentation to the Security Council in September, the deteriorating situation on the ground highlights a dangerous trend which is liable to undermine regional security. The interpreter apologizes. Sound quality is poor. There has been a shifting of the front lines towards the south of Kivu. This has given rise to risks of regional conflagration, which are liable to undermine all of the peace efforts that have been hitherto undertaken. Mr. President, distinguished members of the Council, in this particularly alarming context, what more can be done to alleviate the plight of the civilians, to avoid escalation of the conflict, and to prevent de-escalation of the entire Great Lakes subregion? I wish to take this opportunity to share some priorities which can help to bring about a resolution to the crisis so that we can work hand in hand towards the attainment of our shared objective, peace. The uppermost priority is an immediate, unconditional ceasefire. I wish to remind all parties on the ground of their need to comply with the relevant Security Council resolutions, as well as the commitments undertaken under the Washington Agreement, and to uphold rule of law. Second, there is a need to extend full political support to ensure the implementation of the Washington Agreement and to uphold rule of law. We support UN entities in the region, and they continue to liaise with the facilitators for these two processes to support the implementation of the relevant provisions, specifically in terms of the repatriation of armed groups, foreign armed groups, and mobilization of resources, as well as the need to tackle the root causes of the conflict. I also wish to stress that there's a need to support efforts, and UN support is being delivered for peace efforts on the basis of our respective mandates and the relative advantages. We have significant global and complementary support for the efforts of African and international partners. I wish to take this opportunity to applaud and to encourage the discussions underway on regional economic cooperation. This is a promising dimension of the Washington process, in light of the fact that among the structural elements of the crisis, there is the question of illicit exploitation of natural resources. In this respect, my Bureau intends to continue to advance our advocacy and technical support being provided for the International Conference on the Great Lakes region in order to shore up traceability, accountability, and transparency mechanisms in the provision in the supply chains for minerals in the region. My office also stands ready to engage with the parties and facilitators in order to support or contribute on the basis of our expertise to this new framework for regional economic integration, which is taking shape. Third, supplemental additional efforts are necessary in order to provide for unified and effective and efficient African mediation. I intend to build upon the Secretary General's good offices, as well as the coordination efforts of international partners, specifically within the International Contact Group on the Great Lakes region, in order to support the African Union in its peace initiatives. In this vein, we will continue to liaise with the African Union, both at the level of the Commission and with the leadership of the Conference of Heads of State, in order to strengthen coordination and partnership of the AU-UN on resolving the crisis in the east of the DRC. I wish to take this opportunity to reiterate my readiness and willingness to support, upon the request, support the efforts of President Lourenço as acting chair of the African Union, President Faure Gnassingbé as a mediator of the African Union, as well as the panel of facilitators. In parallel, I shall continue through the regional mandate which was granted to me, continue to play a key role to facilitate understanding among the countries in the region who have been affected in various ways by this conflict and who have different perspectives to share. A common ground, arriving at common ground is of key importance to ensure that all protagonists have within reach and uppermost as a priority the overriding need for peace and cooperation in the region. Fourth, I wish to stress once again that there can be no lasting peace without a meaningful, serious dealing with the root causes and the structural causes of the conflict. To that end, a framework agreement for Addis Ababa remains, the Addis Ababa Framework Agreement remains a key tool, as was reiterated by countries in the region during the 12th high-level meeting of the regional follow-up mechanism. This was held on the 28th of May last in Uganda. I intend to continue efforts towards the revitalization of the framework agreement, which will provide for better follow-up and greater accountability for the fulfillment of commitments made. Mr. President, this year we are marking the 25th anniversary of Resolution 1325 on women, peace, and security. Drawing from the spirit of this resolution, I shall continue to work together with the Special Envoy of the African Union for Women, Peace, and Security, Ambassador Mulamula, with a view to raising the role of women in the peace process underway. In the same vein, in cooperation with MONUSCO, my office has extended support to the mission in Kinshasa last July, and facilitators and former presidents, Madam Catherine Samba-Ponza and Madam Saleh-Wok Zewde, responsible, respectively, for matters of inclusion of women, civil society, and humanitarian matters within the panel. It is a pleasure for me to report that preparations are underway for other missions in the east of the DRC and the region. Distinguished members of the Council, the priorities that I have outlined are geared towards harnessing the assets, the mandates, and the expertise of the various stakeholders while taking into account the gamut of complex dimensions of this conflict. I wish to humbly support these steps forward to taking stock of the regional dimension of this conflict, and I intend to wish to harness your weight and all of the leverage at your disposal as members of the Security Council to ensure that there is enforcement of Security Council Resolution 2773, your resolution. However, we also have an obligation to recognize, as an international community, to acknowledge the fact that all of our actions, all of our resolutions will only bear fruit on the ground if the parties themselves are ready to make peace. This is why, and with this I shall conclude, I call upon the main stakeholders, namely the fraternal countries in the region, to resume direct and frank dialogue, and to adopt all of the necessary provisions to end this war once and for all. Thank you.
Я благодарю господина.
I thank Mr. Huang Xia for his briefing, and I now give the floor to those members of the